Question number 3 in practice set 1 deals with our ability to evaluate expressions. In particular, pay attention to order of operations, and it has a special detail with absolute values signs in them. Order of operations, I like to name it GEMDOS rather than PEMDOS because G stands for a series of grouping symbols, of which I've listed a bunch of them. You got parentheses, square brackets, face brackets, even a fraction bar. As I'm indicating here, fraction bars are grouping symbols, so you got to do everything on the top of that bar first, everything on the bottom of that bar second, and finally divide. We have some others that kind of sneak up on us as well. We've got the square root of A. The square root symbol is a grouping symbol. And the final one that I listed here is the absolute value, which we see in our problem. So I wrote out that order of operations for you in case you wanted to refresh your memory on those. I also put down here this one, which seems to get us quite often. We've got to remember that when we take the opposite of 5 squared, it's a negative 25, whereas we see a negative 5 squared, it's a positive 25. So there's a difference on those, and we practiced that earlier this year. I just wanted to point that out because for whatever reason that becomes a point of contention for us whenever we do these. So on this problem, what would I attack first? Well, I got to look at my grouping symbols. The absolute values are acting as grouping symbols. Now, one thing we need to remember about absolute values is that no matter what you do, whenever you have an absolute value, the number that's in there, it could be a -2, absolute value always returns a positive value. It doesn't matter if it was a positive or negative on the inside of it, even if I emphasize it as positive on the inside, the absolute value returns a positive value back. If you want a little bit of a quick review on absolute values, a geometric interpretation is based upon distance. It always measures how far away are you from 0. So when I have a -2 and I say, what is the absolute value of a -2, it's really saying, what is the distance a -2 is from 0? And we would say 2 units. Distance is always positive. And then on the other side, if I said I got the number 3, what's the absolute value of 3 represent? It represents the distance 3 is away from 0, which is 3 units. So just keep in mind, absolute values are measuring distance from 0. It always comes back positive because it is measuring distance. Now, it seems to be a stickler for us as we have a hard time interpreting what these absolute value signs, where they stop and start. So find your beginning absolute value symbol. I just highlighted in red. I have to go to the next absolute value symbol, which is a bar, and that stops the absolute value. So what we're asked to do in this one here is take the absolute value of a -9. I want to keep on this thread here for a little bit. I keep running across, the next absolute value sign I see is sitting right here. I have to pair that up with the other absolute value on the right hand side, which is right here, which means the only thing we're taking the absolute value of is a -2. There's a lot of misinterpretation that people think that we're taking the absolute value of a -3 in this problem. We are not. Pair up your absolute value symbols. So we got our -9 inside absolute values, we got a -2 inside our absolute values, and our final one, we have a -6 inside our pair of absolute value symbols. One more misinterpretation I see quite often on this problem is people are not aware of what to do with this -3. This -3 is right next to a grouping symbol, or this bar for our absolute value. That indicates that we have to multiply, so I tried to put a dot in there to help you understand that we've got to multiply. So now, working this problem. We take the absolute value of a -9, which is in grouping symbols. That's a 9. Absolute value brings me back to a positive 9. Then we hit our -3, working inside our grouping symbols yet. We have a -2. The absolute value of a -2 is a positive 2. Now that was multiplied times 3 because the 3 next to the bar meant that we were multiplying. It's an implied or implicit multiplication. And then we go to our final grouping symbol, which is an absolute value of a -6. So we have a plus sign. The absolute value of a -6 is 6. Next thing I want to do is we want to apply our order of operations. If I go through my order of operations, what do I do first? Subtract, multiply, or add? Well, according to our order of operations, we better make sure we multiply or divide from left to right before we hit the subtraction addition. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to take our 3 times 2. That's 9 minus 6 plus 6. And if we literally interpret our order of operations, do your addition subtraction from left to right. So that makes it 3 plus 6, and 3 plus 6 is 9. So the correct selection for this question is 9. So quick review of order of operations and absolute values.